we talk about everything and we disagree on a lot.
Yeah, they say you're not supposed to talk about two things, politics and religion. And those are basically all we talk about.
I did not think I'd be insisting so much on law and order.
We just have to take away all the guns from this class of people. This class of people cannot be trusted with firearms.
Yeah, all of a sudden, I found myself siding with the NRA. Maybe gun rights are important, right? Like, I got you to change your mind more.
Sure.
Like, that's not what this is about at all.
It's the reverse, actually. It's about thanking each other for allowing us to see things that we literally could not see that were right in front of our faces.
All right. That's recording.
Welcome to our international debut.
We're calling it The Manifold, right?
The Manifold.
All right.
Welcome to The Manifold, everybody.
Welcome.
I'm Tyler.
I'm Zubair.
I am a Bible-believing Christian.
I don't really believe in much of anything other than that you should be kind to one another. You could probably call me an atheist if you insist on a label.
I voted for Trump 3 times.
I think he's a fascist. I voted for Obama and Biden.
I eat everything. I'm an omnivore.
I think it's been 19 years now that I've been vegan. So yeah, no animal flesh, no animal secretions.
And we're best friends.
Yeah. We lift weights 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Well, on good weeks.
Ideally, right?
We run together, we talk about everything and we disagree on a lot.
Yeah, they say you're not supposed to talk about two things, politics and religion. And those are basically all we talk about whenever we go to the gym or run around.
Sometimes we'll talk about money, the third taboo, but
finance, yeah, right. Yeah. So we decided to do this because we see our country being torn apart. And we've noticed ourselves and the whole country getting siloed into our own echo chambers. There are probably very powerful forces that are doing this, but we can do this all on our own. And we have a story to share. We want to help people figure out how to do what we do and not kill each other.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think, something that this country was really founded on, this idea of engaging with your neighbors. We're neighbors also. And participating in the marketplace of ideas, telling people what you think, actually listening when they tell you what they think, and then figuring out, where you can meet in the middle, what ideas, are completely incompatible. And really not letting the disagreements, fundamental disagreements about, how we think people should live, how we think the world is set up, where we think it came from, but not letting these fundamental disagreements turn you into enemies. I mean, I consider Tyler my best friend. He's probably the first guy I'd go to if an emergency happened and I had to call someone.
We disagree vehemently, often, and loudly. Mostly it's me that's loud. And
this
about
is true.
really, really serious things. And these are the exact kind of issues that they're pulling people apart. So what we want to do is just kind of talk through one of these issues, give you guys a little bit of an insight onto what our conversation looks like on a regular basis, because we have a lot of them. And hopefully this will help any of you who are trying to figure out how to talk to the other side of the aisle, whether that's political, theological, dietary, whatever, instead of hunkering down in our own chambers as it's getting easier and easier to do, and see how this can actually bring understanding, hope, hopefully not, civil war, those kinds of things.
Yeah, it does seem like we're on the verge of a civil war, doesn't it?
Ever closer. And it's been really interesting to see how at least my politics morph and flip-flop as soon as I'm in power or out of power. If my party's in power, all of a sudden my politics get a whole lot more big government than they were before. And, I've seen that certainly happen on the left with Trump now in power and become a lot smaller government oriented. And yeah.
Yeah, all of a sudden, I found myself siding with the NRA. Thinking, maybe gun rights are important, right? Maybe states' rights are important. It's funny how that happens.
Yeah.
So what's the first topic? Are we going to go there? Are we going to talk about
let's
ICE?
do it. Let's jump right in. So, this is the topic of the day. So, ICE has killed 2 citizens now.
They've killed 9 people. The 2 are just the ones that make the headlines.
9 citizens?
I think they're not clear about that in the headlines that I see.
Citizens are people, right? If they're non-citizens, they're not people. That's not
right. Right. I don't know. We could probably look that up.
Okay.
But the headlines that I see, come from generally people of color woke accounts, and they're like 2 white people have been killed, but in the past month or 2, 9 actual people have been killed.
So we have to talk about that. We have to talk about Renee Good and Alex Preddy.
Yep,
I think you pronounce it. And what happened here? I just realized I'm not holding my mic. So
it's important.
So we want to give you kind of our takes on how everything went down from our perspective. And I want to read some of our text messages that we've had with one another.
That's a good idea.
Just so that we can kind of get back into the psychological mood of what we were feeling and thinking at the time. So the first thing that we're seeing is videos, because we all have access to the internet immediately now. And we're seeing the same footage. We're literally watching the same footage almost exactly at the same time. And we're seeing 2 completely different things happen, which is just wild to me.
And I don't think we're the only ones. I think this is happening across the country.
Everybody. Yeah.
Seeing the same exact footage and coming up with different narratives.
And it's not like we've gone and read what CNN or Fox News have said first and then come to our conclusions. We've both just looked at the raw footage, and based on our political biases and nothing else, we start constructing these narratives in our head about what was happening. With me, it's going to be like, well, what was he doing there in the first place? Why was he obstructing officers doing their job? That was a bad idea. And you see something totally different.
I see a guy holding up a camera, trying to protect a woman that's fallen over, that was pushed by a masked officer, and then getting shot in the back on the ground. So that's my first impression when I look at these videos. And I remember we actually didn't talk about it right away. I think he was killed on a Saturday, and I think we just had a couple messages, and we just went through this with Renee Nicole Good, and we ended up not coming to an agreement on. We agreed about something.
Well, we evolved through this story, right?
Yeah.
At first, it was I look and I see this woman hit an ICE officer with her car. I'm thinking, okay, that's assault with a deadly weapon. Of course, you got shot. And you see something completely different initially.
I see a guy standing off to the side, standing up throughout the entire encounter, shooting 3 times through an open window, and then walking off calmly. So that doesn't look at all like someone who's been hit by a car. That looks like someone shooting into a vehicle and creating a danger for everyone around.
Yeah. And so we're constructing these totally different narratives on our heads. I'm thinking this guy's just doing his job. He's probably in a heightened state of emotion. He's in fear for his life. He responds accordingly. He's got a firearm. And then you start looking at those details and saying, okay, if that was in fact what happened, why did it happen this way and not that way? What were the actual facts? And it's not until you start having someone who can speak into your chamber that you can start seeing those details. Well, why was he able to just walk away if he was hit by the car? What happened there? Was he able to get safely out of the way and not shoot this woman? Was she trying to kill him, or was she trying to flee? All of these different questions probably don't get brought up in, I don't know, the Fox News coverage that happens initially. Yeah. It's just, we saw her do it. Let's reinforce the bias. Rah, rah, go team.
So maybe we should talk about what we think about it now. So we've had, I think, 2 or 3 weeks since Renee's shooting. We've had, this conversation where we both kind of spit our own take out at the other person. So I'll start, with the hindsight of 2 to 3 weeks. it seems to me that Renee and her wife were there. This is as experienced protesters. So this didn't look like their first encounter with ICE agents. I almost said first rodeo, but I really try to avoid colloquialisms that take advantage of animals.
Sure.
So yeah, they were very much experienced, right? Renee's wife is saying, "Don't worry, our license plate is going to be the same. We don't change our license plates like you guys do." And Renee's wife was being very confrontational with the ICE agent. I think that is any protester's right. I still do. But I think that you put an element of risk into an environment when you yell at an officer. And Renee was a mother of a young child, and I don't know how I feel about a parent putting themselves in avoidable danger when they have children depending on them. So, I think there was confrontation caused by Renee and her wife. I do think when Renee tried to move out of there, I think if it hadn't been a frozen street with ice, I think she might have hit Jonathan Ross, because you do see the back tire spin a little bit. I still think she was not trying to intentionally hit him, and I think you can make that conclusion because when you look at the video from Jonathan Ross's cell phone, he's very clearly doing the motion that you make when you're doing like a 360-degree turn trying to get out of a situation. So I think there was no intention on Renee's part of trying to hit Jonathan. And I think Jonathan can be blamed here because he walked in front of the car when he didn't need to. And then he shot into the car, which from my understanding is against Border Patrol regulations.
I wasn't aware of that.
So my general picture of who's at fault, I think, is still heavily weighted towards Jonathan Ross. I think Renee and her wife did a lot more to create a sort of confrontational situation than I would have guessed when I first started diving into this material. So, yeah, let's hear your opinion now with the benefit of 3 weeks of hindsight.
Yeah. So as we were combing through the facts, because we can't get to agreement on just the video footage alone, we're thinking, okay, how do we assume intentions here? We can't. I thought the spinning back wheel was good indication that either she wasn't aware of Ross's position or she didn't care, because the acceleration at that point in time, which is evident from the wheel, indicates had the vehicle actually moved and not slid on ice, that would have been much worse for Jonathan Ross. I think he heard that. I think he heard the engine rev and realized that person had intent to harm me. And if it wasn't, he couldn't make that conclusion. It was at least that person needs to stop immediately. And this is all happening within the span of 2 or 3 seconds, with people yelling at you, blowing whistles as loud as they can, blowing horns as loud as they can. I think that it's not too far to say the tactics that are being employed by the professional protesters are designed to get ICE to make mistakes. I think they're designed to get them to be in a heightened state of psychological discomfort so that they will make a mistake. And I think that's exactly what we saw Renee's wife doing. And so as soon as I saw her goading Jonathan Ross, I thought, that's it. I don't care what happens to these people when they're going looking for trouble. They're basically grabbing a bull by the horns. Sorry for the euphemism. They're walking right into danger, and and then saying, well, the snake bit me. Of course the snake bit you. Like you were poking it. And so I let that come out of my emotions in one of our chats. And after I had time to think about it, it was the wrong reaction. This is a human being. This was certainly avoidable. And it's not good to wish death upon anyone. That could have been avoided. With that said, Jonathan Ross was previously in an encounter where there was some kind of vehicle involved in a ramming, a dragging, whatever. He had prior experience with this happening. He was primed to make this assumption, to jump to this conclusion. That doesn't excuse him for making a mistake. He's not excused for making the mistake of walking in front of a vehicle. You are not supposed to do that. That should have been basic training. If he did that unintentionally, I don't blame him because of all the noise going on, but he made a mistake for sure. This second mistake that I think he made was not in getting offline of the vehicle's path as soon as possible, but instead drawing his weapon and then walking casually. Maybe it was slippery where he was trying to walk and he was trying to get there as fast as he could. I didn't see that in his motion. I think that if his intent had been peaceful arrest, he would have made a different decision. But he was clearly flexing. In my opinion, this was because he was put into the state of fight or flight through the psychological tactics, and he was reacting accordingly. And as soon as his wife said, why don't you go get lunch, big boy? I thought, oh no, you didn't. I think that these tactics are designed to get you to react in such a way as to flex, right? And it's his fault for falling for the bait. That's true. But it's like, is it the bull's fault for charging at the red cape? Like, yes, but you have to know that what you're doing is designed to provoke a violent response. And so, yeah, I have to call this one at least 50-50. I think the most generous I could be would be to say that Ross shared 50% of the blame for Renee's death, but I don't think I could go any further than that.
So we still disagree then. So I'd probably put it closer to 80-20 or 90-10 towards Jonathan Ross. And mostly that's because I think officers, if they're given sanction by the state to use violence, they have to be held to a higher standard. If this was just two citizens, engaging because they were arguing because, Renee is blocking the street and Jonathan can't drive by, then I think I'd be closer to you in saying that this is like a 50-50 situation. But because Jonathan has clear protection from the state, right? Like, it's very unlikely he's going to get like a manslaughter or murder charge from this. He has to be held to a higher standard. And I think that because he walked in front of the vehicle, he didn't try to get away. He was recording up until almost the last moment.
When he got hit, he was recording.
Yeah. And when he got hit, it looked like his hand was on the hood of the car, and it pushed him back. So, and he was able to walk. I know he went to the hospital later that day, and they're saying that he had internal bleeding, but he was discharged same day. It couldn't have been anything life-threatening.
Right.
For all these reasons, I do think he still bears the vast majority of the blame for this situation that could have been prevented. Where I've changed in my thinking is when I was first introduced to these videos, I didn't see Renee's wife at all. I didn't hear any of Renee's attitude. And she does have attitude. I know, at least on my side, a lot of people have been quoting that her last words were, "I'm not angry at you." But when you listen to the way she says it, it's dripping with sarcasm.
But it won't come through in an article when you put that in print.
It won't.
All that comes through is I'm not angry at you.
It won't. So I guess where my opinion has changed is, at first I assigned zero fault to either Renee or her wife for creating this situation. It looked to me like they were like, okay, maybe I assigned like under 5% fault because it looked like they were blocking the road. But as we kept talking, I was like, oh, okay, Renee's wife is very much pushing Jonathan's buttons, which I think you have a right to do in this country, but
it's true. Is it smart?
Personally,
do you get to escape from all the consequences of choosing to use that right?
All right, so this reminds me of like maybe a good example here. I was sitting in a car with a friend once,
okay,
and there was a cop that like did a U-turn, or it was some kind of maneuver that was illegal.
Yeah.
My friend honked at the cop. Like, never in my life would I think to honk at a cop, much less yell at them and tell them to go get lunch, big boy. Like, they're like,
yeah.
Personally, and maybe this is, me being a person of color. Maybe this is just me being more scared of cops than I should be. I don't know. I am never looking to enrage a cop or to provoke them in any sense.
I would never do that either. So
maybe it's not a color thing. Like I value my right to protest, but on a human level, like you know when you're squaring up with someone, like like it's different with women and men, but like with men, like when you like do the thing where you like put your chest to someone else's chest and like walk up close to them. Never in my life would I do anything even close to that to a cop. To
somebody who has a monopoly on violence sanctioned by the state that is asking for trouble.
And, maybe like in a perfect society, it shouldn't be, but we live in this society. Like we know what happens when you enrage a person with a gun, especially a cop. Like oftentimes it does lead to violence. So because of that, I think that Renee and her wife made some choices that I wouldn't have made, especially knowing that they had a child that was depending on them. Like that, you can protest without getting confrontational, without yelling, without insulting officers. And at the end of the day, like.
But these are fascists, Zubair. You have to stand up to fascists, or they'll just keep taking more. And if you're not willing to go out on the streets and assert your individual rights, then they're just going to take away all your rights, and then you'll be in the pogroms.
You're saying that sarcastically, but that's like a really convincing argument from my side.
I'm saying that from your perspective, from the side of the left. This is why they're doing what they're doing, because in their minds they are standing up against actual Nazis who are actually going to throw them in a concentration camp if they don't speak up now.
And I know you're saying this as a crazy view, but like I kind of think a lot of that is true. And so like I actually struggle with that view. Like if we're actually seeing something like the rise of the Third Reich, like shouldn't we be violent? And that is a very convincing argument to me, especially.
Yeah. Well, and you've seen organized resistance, not just like people like talking to their neighbors, like, hey, we should do something. Like actual, very well-funded, private encrypted signal chats, taking all this data from ICE agents, tracking them, stalking them, getting their license plates, getting their photos, doxing them. This is organized resistance against the state. That's what's happening right now.
So the two things I want to mention here. So the reason I don't fall down the route that a lot of people on my side end up going towards, as I do have like a strong pacifist streak, and it would take a lot for me to think that violence is justified. Even though like I do think ICE is uncomfortably close to being the Gestapo, I don't know if it's morally justified to like punch them in the face.
And randomly. Just so you know, everybody who just heard that on my side thinks you're crazy. The reason that you're not crazy is because we don't typically have federal agents running around in masks grabbing people off of the streets. That's something that everybody who cares about small government should be concerned about.
Yes,
and that's a fair point. We looked into who is it? Drug enforcement, DEA. whether or not they're required to show their badges or show their faces.
They are.
I think they're not. I thought that's what we found
I
out.
think if they're going undercover.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe you're right. Maybe they're not required to, but I think they generally do.
I think that's where we found the law, is that the law says no, they're not required to show their faces, but it's best practice to do that so that the citizens don't freak out and start to think that you're the Gestapo. So,
Or you have criminals mimicking law enforcement and going out and kidnapping people
right,
under the pretense of being law
being
enforcement.
nice. Yeah, that's a seriously slippery slope that we are both in agreement. This should stop as soon as possible. The problem is possible means we could just forsake the law entirely. We don't have to enforce the law. We don't have to enforce people who are here illegally getting deported. And for me, that's not the right thing to do. The right thing to do is, as soon as we have all of the illegal aliens deported and the wall built, there's no need for ICE anymore, and we should take that power away as soon as possible. The problem is that's going to take a really long time. Meanwhile, this force is getting more and more experience about how to do crowd control, how to secretly pull people out of the night, out of their homes, out of their beds without their neighbors knowing. And that is not a skill set that would-be authoritarians are just going to ignore.
So my instinct is, let's talk about the illegal alien issue, because we disagree strongly there too. But instead, I'm going to focus on like what we agree on here.
Yeah.
I think we both agree that, this is not a society where we want secret police running around.
Yeah.
And I think the longer they keep doing this, the more likely that this is going to be a thing that stays. When the Democrats come into power, they're probably going to keep elements of this. I mean, we saw this with 2008, right? Like the Patriot Act was enacted under Bush. It created broad powers that allowed the government to spy on its citizens. And you know what? Now we just live in a society. We're like, oh yeah, I got my personal CIA agent. I'm on a list. Don't say that online. Like, it just sticks around. Like it's a slippery slope, like you said. So I'm going to focus on that. Like, right? That's the thing that we agree on.
We agree we don't want a Gestapo.
We don't want the government having more and more tendrils into our lives where they're able to not just spy on us, but now detain us and take us out of our homes secretly.
Yeah. So every time ICE takes some U.S. citizen and forcibly detains them, that U.S. citizen's constitutional rights have been violated, and they should sue the government and get compensated. And I believe that is happening. So there are still protections in place if you are a citizen. If you're not a citizen or here legally, then you are without protections. Is that right or wrong?
So we should probably look up what happens to citizens that do get detained.
Okay.
Whether they're actually getting any money or any kind of compensation for their rights being violated.
Yep.
Because I'm not sure that they are. This is like a large-scale deportation project. They're trying to get millions of people out of the country. But to your other point, is it wrong for them to detain a non-citizen? I still think it is. I think, like the founding document, the Declaration, doesn't say we hold these rights of citizens to be inalienable. It says we hold these rights to be inalienable because they're inherent to who we are as being part of the human race.
That's right.
And I think the freedom from being imprisoned is one of those fundamental freedoms. If the government is going to put you in a box and restrict your ability to move around, there needs to be some sort of legal process for that. Now, I don't know what it is, and maybe it doesn't need to be as, fully in-depth as the one that's used for citizens, but I don't like a society where the government can just question your status as a citizen and be like, all right, well, you're getting deported now, or you're getting imprisoned.
Especially if they make a mistake.
Exactly, right?
Yeah. Who was the guy that made a mistake on? What was that guy? He got deported to the El Salvador jail.
Oh, Gabriel Garcia? Or Abrego, yeah.
Yep. So he did make it back into the U.S., which I heard not a peep about. I just stumbled upon it one day. Though he is back here in the US, it turns out that the US did have the capability to extradite him back from El Salvador back into the United States until such time as he had his due process
Good.
day in court
That was a win for
the rule of law.
Yeah, for the rule of law, which I did not think I'd be insisting so much on law and order. Like in my teenage years, I smoked a lot of weed. Like I was very much not about law and order. Like, and I think a lot of people on my side like often use I've used this example, the example of slavery, right?
Yeah.
They're like the law is not the same as morality because slavery used to be legal. We got it so wrong for like a century or longer. But I mean, right now, insisting on law and order is of paramount importance because it seems to be the only way that we can protect ourselves from what seem to be the capricious whims of a mad king.
The Law and Order Mad King. That's one of his bases that he ran on.
Yeah.
Yes, if he's getting the Democrats to vote for law and order and the Republicans to vote for gun control, you know this is a master persuader. So right now,
or a cult leader.
I am so very good at talking, at code switching. I am so close to saying, you know what? We just have to take away all the guns from this class of people. This class of people cannot be trusted with firearms. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, that sounds a lot like what I heard your side saying a little bit ago.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
So let's move on to Alex. So right now we've both shifted because in my initial outlook, I said it's 100% Renee's fault. She shouldn't have been there. There's absolutely no guilt that Jason, Jonathan
Ross,
should feel. And now I say there's some responsibility. Sitting here in my armchair, it's easy for me to cast judgment, but the jury will decide.
So let's stop here for a minute because I think we both quantified how much we've shifted, and you said you've gone from 100 Renee to 50-50, and I said that I've gone from like 100 Jonathan Ross to like, let's say 75-25. I think it's really important to like not, if our positions were flipped, I think it's one of the things that makes our conversations work is like we don't like gloat over our wins. So like, I got you to change your mind more.
Sure.
Like, that's not what this is about at all.
It's the reverse, actually. It's about thanking each other for allowing us to see things that we literally could not see that were right in front of our faces. And hopefully this is one of the takeaways that our listeners get is it's not just okay to be wrong. It's a good thing to find out what you don't know.
Yeah.
You're much more dangerous if you think you know things that you don't actually know. And this is how we're going to, end up going to war with one another, is because we're going to think we know so hard what the truth is, and the other people are so crazy that we're willing to treat them as subhumans and kill them.
Instead of just talking. Like, instead of just having a conversation and listening.
I got to read you a story from the Civil War that I looked up. I'm just bumped the camera. There were several families that were caught on either side of the conflict.
Brother versus brother.
This was the Brothers' War. The story of the Terrell family from Virginia is perhaps one of the most tragic examples in military professionalism clashing with family blood. William Terrell remained loyal to the Union and became a general. James Terrell joined the Confederacy and also rose to the rank of general. We've got two generals in the Army on either side. Their father, heartbroken, wrote that he had no sons, only two monsters. In a cruel twist of fate, both brothers were killed in action. James was killed at Bethesda Church, and William at Perryville. So they are literally buried in different states. Their bodies are forever separated. They should have been buried in the same graveyard next to each other as family, like a bunch of families were back then. Instead, they are literally separated by this war for the end of time because of this incapability of people to communicate with one another and say, we've got to find another way around this thing. We cannot go to war and kill each other. So if you think that it's fun to just laugh at the other side and say, what a bunch of idiots, I can't believe that they think this kind of stuff, you will laugh yourself into a civil war. And maybe that's too strong a statement, but I really think that scoffing is one of the fuels that's going to be used to get us to other the other side so that we will kill each other. And I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility in my generation or my son's generation.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before. I think it's the CIA, one of the 3-letter agencies. They have this index based on different things that are happening in a country, and they usually use it to look at other countries. And after compiling all these different characteristics, they come up with an estimate of how likely civil war is, or some kind of turmoil. Somebody, in the past 5 years, in the post-COVID period, looked at America, and we rank pretty high on there. So I think, to your point, civil war is a real possibility, like within the decade, or within this generation or the next. And what are we even going to be fighting over? Like, it's not like there's slavery, right? Like, you could say that the Civil War was justified to eradicate that evil from the country, right?
Okay, you're going to lure me into my most hateful thoughts about the Democratic Party.
Oh no!
And well, this is what is going to be going on in the minds of people who are literally willing to take up arms and go kill one another. For the right, going to kill the left, or the people that believe that those people are on the left. The left is not a monolith. One of the things we do is we paint with broad brushstrokes, and that's a bad idea. The right isn't a monolith either. When I think of the left and the hatred that I feel for this ideology, I think I use the phrase like those baby murdering, child mutilating, Western civilization destroying sexual perverts. That's what's going through my mind when I'm thinking, how could I possibly coexist with someone who hates me and what I stand for and hold most dear so deeply? And that is a incredibly powerful force for motivating people to go kill each other.
So yeah, I don't know that I hate the right the way that you hate the left. I definitely hate Trump and the MAGA crowd because I see a polarizing force. It looks to me like a ton of grifters at the top that are fooling half the country into voting against their own interests and bringing out the absolute worst in our country. Racism, jingoism, protectionism, a lot of isms. And, I'm going to quote George Bush here, unfortunately, like when you have all these isms coming up, it ends up going into an ugly place. And I think when old George talked about it, he was talking about the 1930s and the lead up to World War II. But I don't know that I have the same kind of hatred. It's more of like a disdain, like, oh, you idiots, like you're actually going to do this. You're actually going to disregard the peaceful transfer of power and claim that an entire election was stolen. You're going to...
You give non-zero odds to Trump trying to suspend elections here in November, right?
I think there's probably like a 10% chance that he tries to skip midterms.
Man.
So yeah, I do think that, like the fabric of our country is at risk of tearing apart. And I guess that's really what I hate most about the right. Because I think that they are at fault for it because of the way they are wielding power and disregarding norms, especially the peaceful transfer of power and the respect for the will of the majority. Like, those are things that are bedrock ideas that this country is built upon. And I think the right is disregarding them, or at least those are power.
I think J6 was a mostly peaceful protest.
That's another area where we disagree. And I think you actually changed my mind more than I changed yours. At the end of our discussion about that, you got me to agree that it wasn't an insurrection. So I've always referred to it.
That's pretty big,
right?
That's pretty big with the amount of times that word was repeated.
I think I refer to it now as the violent trespass at the nation's capital, which I think should make people more angry. But it is not an insurrection, to your point.
I think that the sticking point there was the total lack of weapons that were at the insurrectionists' disposal. Had they wanted to violently overthrow power, and they were all conservatives, something magically disappeared all of their weapons. That's just the most dissonant part of that narrative.
There was a lack of gunfire, right? Like if this was a real insurrection, like a real coup d'etat, you would have seen some sort of armed faction like actually start mowing down the police at the Capitol, actually start shooting senators, and seizing the building for themselves. Mm. So you didn't see that happen like you have in many examples of coups abroad.
Yeah.
But I will push back. There are multiple pictures, you can Google it online, of people carrying, like, I don't know gun terms, but like large rifles, right?
Really? In the crowds?
Yeah, and this came up now because of the Alex Preddy situation. So
yeah.
Because, you had Kash Patel with his goofy looking face. I'm sorry, but first thing I think of when I think of the guy. You have Kash Patel, you have Kristi Noem, Scott Bessent talking about how you just don't bring a gun to a protest. My side has been flashing pictures of the January 6th protesters, fully armed and loaded, and they're easily many examples that are easily found.
Wow. Yep, that didn't make it through my feed. I definitely didn't see that. But you did have a total lack of the police officers getting shot by protesters, and that same cannot be said of the police towards the protesters. They killed Ashley Babbitt.
That's true.
When she was coming through the window, but same kind of thing. If you weren't looking for trouble, you wouldn't have found it.
All right, so let's try a new topic that we haven't argued about.
All right.
So, were the cops who killed Ashley Babbitt justified in killing her? Because arguably they feared for their life.
Yep. Ashley would not have died if she was not there that day.
Right? So that's really hard for me to say, because I think of Babbitt and all the other January 6th folks as people that were trying to steal an election.
Yeah.
But
she was lionized on the right? This was a martyr for our constitutional rights, taking back our country, making sure that we weren't going to have the election stolen from underneath us, and she was lionized.
So for me to be consistent, I have to say that Ashley Babbitt was a victim, and she was gunned down in cold blood. If I'm going to treat her the same way that I'm thinking about Renee Good and Alex Preddy, she just happened to be protesting for a cause that I strongly disagree with.
Right.
But if I'm going to be consistent, I should say that she shouldn't have been killed.
Right.
So,
same cause, our protection of our constitutional rights, but from a completely different angle.
So why do you think? So I guess before going on, what are your thoughts? How do you reconcile that kind of like cognitive dissonance between what you think of Ashley Babbitt and what you think of Renee Good?
All three deaths were tragic. All three deaths were totally avoidable.
Yeah.
If you weren't smashing your way through a window, you probably would not have gotten shot by an officer of the law who's authorized to use deadly force. I don't want to go up against the government. I really don't want to have to get to that point. I don't know what it will take for me to be pushed to that point. I think the left has decided we want violent, illegal criminals in our societies so badly that we are willing to literally die to prevent the federal government from taking them out. That's not my red line. That's nowhere close to my red line, where I'm going to say, you know what? What's worth me going and dying and leaving my family fatherless? I don't know what that line is, but it's not that.
Yeah. So I think that's probably the right place to take it, and I hope everyone watching this, and really anyone in the country, can agree that all three deaths were tragic, were avoidable, and should not have happened.
Yeah.
And I think unless you're a Chinese or Russian bot, you have to agree with that. These are people that were in the prime of their lives.
Yeah. By the way, my side totally hates that I said that about Ashley, but that's the reality. You can say that she was just defending her constitutional rights, and that's probably true. And you can also agree that if she was not trying to get into the Capitol building, trespassing, doing something that was illegal, there is no way she would have been shot by that officer. Those things are true.
Yeah, so if I'm gonna kind of extend that same logic to the two that I, feel strongly about, Renee and Alex, if they had not been in the streets, being lawful observers or blockading the street with their cars, they wouldn't have gotten killed, and they'd probably still be alive today.
And both of them did break the law, by the way. They do a very good job of not forcibly obstructing agents, but both of them did actually cross the line. Neither of them probably deserved death, what happened, but I don't think that you get to choose in those instances with those heightened emotions and situations whether or not you get to get killed. And that should be part of your calculus. If you decide it is so important that you go out and you get in the way of a federal officer who's armed, you need to know that that is you taking your life in your hands. You had better be ready to pay that cost.
I think that's the thing I can absolutely agree with. If you're going to protest against ICE or raid the Capitol, you have to absolutely realize that your life will be in jeopardy.
And I think the left is trying to have it both ways right now. They're trying to say, well, this was totally unexpected and there's no way to justify this at all. And that's not what our forefathers' attitude would have been. It would have been, we're all going to get hung by the British government if we lose this war. They knew exactly the risk they were taking, and they swore and they pledged their sacred honor, their lives to one another, because they knew the risks. But I think that the leftist narrative right now is saying, well, this is totally unjustified, and how could this possibly have happened? It's because you stood up against the federal government.
I think that's a part of it. I think it can still be called unjustified. So it was avoidable, yes. I don't think either Jonathan or, if we ever get the name of Alex's shooter, were justified in using deadly force. So let me ask, because I don't know about the Ashley Babbitt situation, right? Like, that's one where my side didn't paint her as a victim.
Yeah.
Were the officers who killed her, were they ever put on trial? Did they go?
I believe they were acquitted.
But they did go through a trial process. Like, charges were brought against them.
I can't remember now. I remember that 6 of them committed suicide, and that was extremely odd.
Do you remember reading about the suicides?
I don't remember what happened, but I remember now that individual, who, it might have been the individual who killed Ashley Babbitt himself, actually owns a Medicare daycare center.
In Minnesota?
I don't think it's in Minnesota, but I think he's connected.
That would be the timeline messing with us.
Yes, exactly. I know that he was not ever found at fault, and that's basically what we should expect for both Jonathan Ross and Alex Preddy's shooter. The FBI, the DOJ, does a really good job of protecting the government. And the same is true of police officers. Like, the standard for police officers to have their qualified immunity revoked is so high, as it should be, that you have to be so egregiously in violation of your oath that we have to say, there's no possible way that what you did was at all justified. You're clearly a racist. You were standing on the guy's neck, hoping that he would die.
So George Floyd, his killer.
Yeah.
Right? So that was clearly egregious then. Or do you think that was a miscarriage of justice?
Even then, I think that Chauvin, I think there's a case to be made that Floyd died from overdose, not from Chauvin's chokehold.
So even though I strongly think that, Jonathan Ross and Alex's killer both need to spend time in bars, I don't think I'm the person to make that decision. I don't think anyone in the audience is here. Anyone in the audience is capable of making that decision either. I think they both need to go through some sort of judiciary process, have charges brought against them, and then have a jury and a judge investigate the facts and figure out what the crime should be.
That is the rule of law, and that's a good way to try and hopefully prevent this. Now we get to how you rig a jury and which
Yeah,
jurisdiction
yeah.
they're tried in.
It's imperfect.
We won't go down that route today.